Can I attend an SSPX Mass? This was the question that I asked myself for several years. I fell in love with the Latin Mass, but it was always difficult to attend the diocesan Latin Mass in my area, though I did and still do. It's always at an inconvenient time and place. The venue gets moved around, and the times change. Not like every month or anything, or even every year. However, the SSPX chapel is always at the same place and at a reasonable time. But I was hesitant. I mean, after all, they are in an irregular canonical status. Their priests are suspended a divinis. If I go to one of their masses, am I committing a sin? Will I be excommunicated? Does it fulfill my Sunday obligation? Is it even valid? Does transubstantiation even occur? If I go to their confession, will my sins be forgiven? So I did some research. Forget all the other stuff. I don't have to agree with everything about them or what they say. I don't agree with half of the things that are said in the Novus Ordo churches. I wanted to know, can I attend a Mass at the SSPX without sinning or getting excommunicated or some other penalty? Can I take communion? And does it fulfill my Sunday obligation? And after much looking into this, you might say, I found that the answer to these questions was a very reluctant yes. You can go to the SSPX Mass without sinning or getting excommunicated or incurring some other penalty. You can take communion, and it does fulfill your Sunday obligation. You can even give money. The PCED said so. And all the sacraments are valid. So the Mass is valid. Transubstantiation does happen at an SSPX Mass. Now, I'm not going to give all the reasoning behind that in this video. I have several videos on the SSPX giving this information. Just go to my SSPX playlist. But I am going to point out one thing. Pope Francis gave faculties to all SSPX priests for confession. So you can go to an SSPX priest for a valid and licit confession and get your sins forgiven, just like with any other Catholic priest. Now, this was the reason I even looked into the SSPX. If Pope Francis hadn't done that, I probably would never have gone. And the critics of the SSPX will say, yes, Pope Francis gave faculties for confession, but he did not give faculties for Mass. Therefore, attending their Mass does not fulfill your Sunday obligation and is a sin, even though the Church has said otherwise, reluctantly, but nonetheless. Now, here's how it works in the traditional groups. Whether SSPX, FSSP, or the diocesan Latin Mass, my point is Pope Francis is well aware of what I'm about to say. The priest does confession before Mass. 5 minutes before Mass, he closes confession and prepares. So you're telling me that Pope Francis created a situation where people would validly and licitly get their sins forgiven only to commit another mortal sin a few minutes later. And before you say Pope Francis expects us to go to their confessions only and then illicit Mass elsewhere, no, he doesn't. Listen to this. This is the document that extended faculties to SSPX priests for confession indefinitely. Quote, for the Jubilee year, I had also granted that those faithful who, for various reasons, attend churches officiated by the priests of the priestly fraternity of St. Pius X. So right there, it's for the people who go to their Masses. Continuing, can validly and licitly receive the sacrament of absolution for their sins, for the pastoral benefit of these faithful, and trusting in the goodwill of their priests to strive with God's help for the recovery of full communion in the Catholic Church, I have personally decided to extend this faculty beyond the Jubilee year, lest anyone be deprived of the sacramental sign of reconciliation through the Church's pardon. So again, Pope Francis did this for those who attend the Mass of the SSPX. He does not expect that we will go to another Mass. So how can attending the Mass be in and of itself a sin or not fulfill our Sunday obligation, which would be a sin? The only logical conclusion is you can go to a Mass at the SSPX chapel without sinning, being excommunicated, or receiving some other penalty, and it does fulfill your Sunday obligation. It's funny, last Sunday I was walking to the building and a woman and her 2 children were walking in front of me dressed in casual clothes, like people wear when they attend the Novus Ordo. She sees all the people are dressed up and the women are wearing veils. She stopped, thought about it, and then turned around and went back to her car and left. And yeah, I get it. It's intimidating at first. I did the same thing 2 or 3 times before I finally went in. And I felt like saying to her, it's okay, you didn't know. Nobody's going to bite you. You're not the first person to come here in t-shirt and blue jeans. You'll know better next time. But for now, come in. But I didn't. Ironically, Father's homily for that day was how we need to invite people to Mass. Now, I want to cut through some of the noise a little bit. There is this rising opposition to the SSPX, and it's quite frankly getting out of hand. Some people are saying that clerical abuse is worse in trad groups, specifically the SSPX, than in Novus Ordo groups. But do these people offer any real hard evidence to show that? No. In fact, everything that I've seen says it's the other way around. And I don't want to be for traditional priests and against Novus Ordo priests on this issue. My position has always been to defend the priesthood and point out that the vast majority of priests, traditional or Novus Ordo, are good men who wouldn't hurt a fly. And it's shameful that these Catholics are using the same tactic against traditional groups like the SSPX that the enemies of God use against the church as a whole. I mean, think about it. How easy would it be for someone to start a YouTube channel, get a whole bunch of people who've been abused by Novus Ordo priests and bring them on one after the other, and then just make a blanket statement saying 50% or whatever of Catholic priests are pedophiles, stay away from the Catholic Church? Very easy. People have done it. Are these people telling the truth? Maybe some aren't, but most probably are. Is the conclusion correct? No. Does the host have an agenda? Yes. Is the host putting forth a false narrative? Yes. Are there cases of abuse in trad groups? Yes. But just like the rest of the Catholic Church, it's a small minority of priests. And compared to the general population, it's lower. And if you're going to say otherwise, you better prove it, sister. Otherwise, it's just a tactic to keep people from looking into the SSPX as an alternative to the Novus Ordo. People want tradition, and let's face it, the SSPX in most cases is the best option. You're more likely to have access to an SSPX chapel than any other traditional group. Until my next video, God bless.